While unlicensed copies of the Browning High Power have been made all over the world, in particular in Hungary, the guns made in Argentina were not only licensed copies, that factory was set up by FN engineers.
During the 20th century, the Republic of Argentina made some interesting choices about what firearms to adopt. And when it made those choices, Argentina, very interestingly, made a series of really good choices. During this period, Argentina is using a sidearm that was designed by the greatest gunmaker who ever lived, John Moses Browning, in the form of what they called the S-27, which was really just an Argentine licensed copy of the Model 1911A1 pistol and .45 ACP. And they would use those all the way through the 50s into the 60s, and it's not until they get to the 70s that they begin to think about something new.
The Argentinians have a long history of adopting John Moses Browning guns, and they looked at what really was the finest gun in the world at the time for a military pistol, and that was the Browning High Power. It had 9mm chambering, sufficient power. It had a staggered column magazine, and it was a single-action gun that was ergonomically excellent.
As is often said, that imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, and this firearm was recognized pretty much from the get-go as being one of the best pistols that anyone had ever come up with.
The Argentinians bought some of the high powers, and then they decided, you know what, we just want to make this gun ourselves. So about 1969, a factory was set up in Argentina to manufacture the guns. And this was not an unlicensed copy. It's not like the things made in Indonesia or Hungary or something like that. These are guns that are made on tooling purchased from Fabrique Nationale in a factory set up by technicians and engineers from Fabrique Nationale. The guns were made under license, and they were very well made guns. When you look at an Argentine high power, it's every bit as nice and comparable to guns made in Belgium in the same era.
The gun was put into production in Argentina under license in the same form that the Belgians were making it. And in fact, you have to read what's stamped on the side of the gun to tell the difference between them. They're otherwise identical. At any given point in production, if the Belgians made a modification under the terms of the license, the Argentines would make a similar change. So at any given era of production, the guns pretty much track each other.
The thing that the Argentinians did that the Belgians never did was make a detective version. And these guns were shortened. Now, this is a single-action semi-automatic high power that simply bobbed. And it's actually kind of an odd-looking gun, and you don't actually see very many of them. These guns were imported into the United States in several different configurations by several different importers. And they do turn up. They typically have the black enamel finish of a military pistol, but quality throughout is generally very good.
There's a critical moment in the immediate aftermath of the Falklands War, because the Falklands War first of all, it's a big loss for Argentina. They lose in the war. The United Kingdom retakes the Falkland Islands, and the United Kingdom, in prosecuting war against Argentina, ultimately creates circumstances by which the military leadership of the country collapses. And with the failure of that state, Argentina is thrown into economic upheaval, and ultimately Argentina gets creative about generating revenue and bringing money into the country, because the FAP, the military small arms factory in Rosario, it was a state-owned industry. And in the aftermath of the war, Argentina sought to bring in some money, and they did so by beginning to sell rifles and pistols made at the military small arms factory, FAP, in Rosario. And who was the best possible client out there? Well, there were Americans by the thousands wanting to buy Argentine rifles, Argentine pistols, and Argentine ammunition. And included among those is this guy, because I am a big fan of these firearms. And Argentina began offering for sale an export version of their FMAP produced 9mm high power pistol that was designated the M90. And M90 pistols, for the most part, they were simply guns that were taken in and they were overhauled. They were given a new coat of paint. They were given a different grip, and then they were exported into the United States.